Good afternoon, everybody. It's absolutely fantastic to welcome you here to another SME for Labour event. My name's Emily Wallace and I'm on the exec committee of SME for Labour. I've been here 3 nights, which is why my voice is slightly lower perhaps than it might be. It was on Saturday anyway. So we have an absolutely fantastic panel for you today, and we have a number of MPs that are also going to pop in. We're all fascinated to learn more about open banking and have got a panel that's going to give us an update on the impact of open banking 5 years on and the impact for SMEs and consumers. Particularly, we're going to focus on SMEs today. I'm going to introduce them very briefly, and then I'm going to ask them to all just say a few things about themselves, their organisation, and open banking. And then we're going to have a few questions from the chair before opening out into the audience. I might ask if someone can get me some water as well, because I think my voice might not last in the end. Thank you. I didn't realise it was like that. Right, so on my right is Marion King. Marion has just been explaining her career history. I can already tell she's an absolutely formidable woman who's got a kind of 20 odd years more than that experience in this sector. So I'm really interested to hear what she's got to say. She's currently the trustee and chair of Open Banking Limited. Mirza on my left is the CFO of Truelayer, which is a large fintech. And at the end, Stephen Wright, who is head of open banking at NatWest Group, and absolutely delighted that Lord Ian McNicol has joined us on the end, looking fresh still, Ian. How's that possible?
Just don't drink.
Who is deputy leader in the Lords? Is that your official title?
One of the deputy speakers.
One of the deputy speakers in the Lords.
Here in a personal capacity.
Here in a personal capacity, and very interested in this issue. So here to learn and listen as much as give some thought. So thank you very much, Ian, for joining us. I'm going to ask you all just to do a few minutes and then we'll start the conversation. I'll go for Marion first.
I'll start. Okay, hi. So Marion King. I joined as chair and trustee of Open Banking in February this year. And as Emily said, prior to that, I've been in the payments arena for over 20 years. And prior to that, had a global career at Reuters for another 20 years. So I've been in the financial services all my career. Open banking is critical to the economy. I took over in February. At that point, the CMA order, the order that was created in 2017 to enforce 9 banks to share via API bank account data, was largely delivered. And so I was in a very privileged position to pick it up from the delivery of that order. And what we've seen this year is growth. We've seen growth in transactions, we've seen growth in payments powered by open banking. And so in February, we announced 7 million regular users of open banking. In August, that's now it's heading towards 8 million regular users. And 11.75 million payments were transacted in August, powered by open banking. So we're starting to see growth happen. We're starting to see changes made. The reason why I'm so passionate about open banking is it benefits all. It puts control in the hands of the account owner, be that an individual, be that an SME, be that an organisation. And it enables many different applications provided by fintechs across the UK economy. So we have over 300 fintechs now utilising open banking as a mainstay of its business model, and we're seeing continued growth. The next phase, however, is really important. We have to move beyond the 9 banks that currently provide their API suite, and we need to ensure that we have this right across the economy and access for all in a fair and equitable way. To do that, we're now delivering against what's called the JROC plan, Joint Regulatory Oversight Committee, 4 regulators involved, and the bulk of that work will be completed by the end of this year. So next year we will see open banking being a new entity, we will see a funding model that ensures its sustainability, and we'll see the expansion and growth of open banking capability.
That sounds really exciting. I'm looking forward to getting into the discussion about what's been achieved to date and what more we might expect in the future. Why don't I go to Stephen next, if you want to give us a brief introduction to you, your role, and what NatWest Group is up to in this area.
So Stephen Wright from NatWest Group. I'm going to head up open banking there and have been involved since the very beginning. My career has been mainly in payments, but also across banking and the telco industry. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get involved in open banking, was I saw the kind of power of having APIs and standards in telco and thinking what you could do with that in banking. So NatWest is one of the 9 banks that Marion's already mentioned that's under the order, and we had to deliver open banking for the order, but also for Payment Services Directive 2. We're probably maybe unique in the market in that at the very outset, we actually looked at this strategically and came to the conclusion that there was more potential upside to data sharing than there was downside, and that we should see this regulation as an opportunity as opposed to seeing it as a threat. And that's very much has influenced what we've done in open banking since. So as well as delivering the APIs to be compliant with the regulation, we've actually looked to use those services ourselves and come up with innovative propositions for customers and for small businesses. And we've also looked to actually reuse the APIs and see how we can transform our own and simplify our own business as well. And I think one of the big things to talk about today is how data sharing and standardization through APIs can help simplify how you run and manage a business.
Brilliant. Yes, as a small business owner, I'm really, it's all gobbledygook apart from the bit where you say, and this is how it will help your business, which is the bit where my ears prick up. Mo, do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction into your business and how you can help me?
Well, thanks very much for having me. My name's Mo. I'm the CFO at Truelayer. My background is I've worked in various sort of finance roles in technology for about 15 years. We as a business now were founded back in 2016, really at the start of open banking, and I suppose broader PSD2, which is the European umbrella, to build a new form of payments network that is fairer, better, converting, cheaper and more secure for consumers and for businesses. And so that's really the genesis of what it is that we've been focused on since 2016. And I think it's really important to say a couple of things about that. First of all, it was clear from about 2016 that the UK would be ahead of other markets in terms of implementing open banking. And so there was a real opportunity for us to build this business in the UK. But second of all, I think what the opportunity is really is about putting more control in the hands of consumers and businesses. I think, as both Marion and Stephen have said, it's about saying to both consumers and businesses, how do you have more control over the payment flow? How do you have more control over what data that you're sharing to third parties? And really that's at the heart of what it is that we do today, whether it's providing a very simple and straightforward and safe way for consumers to pay on various merchants online, or to give them a way of sharing their data in order to improve various services for them in a very secure way, or about how we simplify costs for SMEs, how we increase settlement speed so that they get access to funds immediately, how we reduce fraud. All of these things, I think, are really important component parts of what it is that we focus on. And I think it's really important to say that in the UK at least, this has been the driver of open banking, not just in Europe, but globally as well. I think lots of other countries in the world have looked at what it is that we've done in the UK around open banking and the works that the banks and the regulators and folks like OPIE have really pushed alongside us to kind of create this market opportunity in the UK.
Brilliant. I think you need to speak a little bit more into the microphone. It's fantastic. You know, you're in a must go to fringe when you have two MPs sitting in the front row. So I should give a massive shout out to Naz Shah and to Virendra Sharma for joining us, and hopefully get to bring you into the conversation. But before we do that, you can sit and listen to Ian McNicol give us a few minutes introduction on some of the issues that he thinks might be brought up by some of this technology.
So, Ian McNicol, I'm in the House of Lords, one of the Labour peers. I come at this from two different angles. So I chair an advisory board. I'm of a fintech which uses open banking and has done for the last 5 years to make lending decisions. We do not use any of the credit reference agencies. Are there any CRAs in the room? No? Okay. No one's ducking down. So we don't use any of the credit reference agencies to make our lending decisions. The business uses open banking, and we're in a really tough market, but it does it in a very ethical and sound way. So the technology can be used for good. And one aspect which is worth sharing of how it can be used for good is, before we lend, we will look at someone. So these are people who cannot get credit from the banks, don't have credit cards, don't have overdrafts, have no access to normal forms of low cost credit. And the first thing we do is, because of open banking and the fact that we can go back 6 months, we can check that they are getting the right benefits. It's a fantastic tool. So before lending to them, we will then point them to the benefits that they are not claiming, that they could be claiming from the government, before they then try and get money. So a fantastic opportunity there. So the one caveat, so that's the business side of it, and really enjoying that. And we're a fintech. We're trying to scaling up businesses in the UK is really tough. Startup, we're brilliant at in the UK, but scaling is really, really difficult. We can't get money from the banks to scale it, we can't get money from the banks. So we've had to go outside of the UK to get the finances to scale the business. The other side of it, which is, how do you ensure consumer protection, right? Because open banking can be used not in a good way. And the FCA have recently done a fantastic job, after complaints went into the FOS, the Financial Ombudsman, to place restrictions on a business that was using open banking not for good. They had access to people's bank accounts, they had the rolling credit so they could go in and take money at specific times. That company are now out of business. The FCA did a fantastic job, but how do you ensure, if we expand, which we should, open banking and then into open finance around pensions, open energy, how do you ensure that the protections are in place to protect the consumer? Because the speed of transactions is fantastic. The other great selling point is the ability to reduce fraudulent transactions. So I paid HMRC at the end of the year, clicked on the link. So rather than having to go to my bank and then type in the details, clicked on the link on HMRC, that went straight to my bank account, paid it, and it went straight across immediately. Just fantastic through the APIs that we're setting. So there are opportunities to do good. There are opportunities for fintechs in a whole host of areas to excel. But how do we ensure that the protections are wrapped around it to make so that's the two aspects of it, but great opportunities, and hence I'm popping along to say a few words. And we've now been joined by Siobhan as well, so we've now got 3 MPs in the first 3 rows. So
great.
So thank you. And actually, I'd love I won't be able to stay for a long time, but I'd love to hear from yourselves on some of the good, bad issues that you, and opportunities that you think are there. So thank you.
Brilliant, thanks Ian, and welcome to Siobhan. And absolutely, fantastic supporter of SME for Labour, and a hero of mine as well. So thank you, Siobhan. Why don't we kick off with that question that Ian just posed, which is how do you ensure sort of that security, safety, but most of all that consumers and SMEs can feel that it's open banking is something that they can trust and use, so that you can build the market. I don't know who wants to.
Shall I kick off? Yeah. I think the important thing to note is that open banking is built on the security frameworks of the existing banks. So, the KYC, AML, checks and balances that are in the banks, it's built on top of that. And it's important that also open banking is a trust framework. So open banking manages that trust through, technology to ensure we have the best possible security. But open banking does not see the data. The data flows through a trust framework where we onboard and monitor those transaction flows. Part of the JROT work, there's 2 work streams in the JROT work to address these issues that we're talking about. One is the exchange of data across the banking ecosystem to mitigate the risks of financial crime, and open banking enables more effective exchange of data that we know could have fraudulent activity. Similarly, the consumer protection. When a transaction goes wrong, how do we protect to ensure that by using real-time payments, the consumer still has the same protection that it does using a card or MasterCard or Visa? And those things are happening now. We need to have those nailed by next year, for Q1 next year. But you can never say 100%. We have to protect what we have. The key word in all of this is standards. We need a standard setter in the UK across smart data that will oversee the different smart data sets as we move beyond open banking to open finance, and then potentially beyond open finance to open everything, energy, telco, health. These are all data sets that need to operate against standards. And the second magic word is monitoring. What the UK has that we don't see elsewhere in other countries yet is the rigorous monitoring of that data on a real-time basis in terms of what is happening, and making sure that bad actors are picked out and dealt with. I personally talk to every member of the CMA 9 every month to check on all of the controls and measures around that data.
Just to pick up on some of the language, when you say standard setter, do you mean regulator, or is it something different?
I mean something different. So I mean standards of data, technical standards, rules of the game. How you participate are standards around data. That needs to sit within a regulatory framework, and we need that long-term regulatory framework. We need the DPDI bill to go through, irrespective of which government we are sitting under, because we need to have the powers to enforce the sharing of data, to enable a data sharing economy. And it sounds blindingly obvious, but we do need to see that.
I'm going to bring that in. You might need to... Yeah, there we go.
Thank you very much for that. It's a really interesting bridge meeting, and it's good to see colleagues here, many of us. Power of Ibrahim, wherever he is, out there. So, one of the things to me is shadow crime prevention is about how do we, because 40% of crime is now online, and it's whether we get the security right and what opportunities or what the challenges for us as a potential new government coming in, what the current government isn't doing. So we're just not measuring, when we're talking about crime, we're not measuring online crime, we're not measuring banking crime, we're not measuring those things at the moment. And then the key, the other word for me, in addition to the word that you talked about, is accountability and potential prosecution, and how we get access to that data as law makers, as our law enforcement agencies and our prosecutors. And I was speaking to a police company yesterday, and they were saying on average we have a police officer that's registering a crime that spends 5 hours redacting just GDPR data that could identify somebody. And despite the Home Office wanting to change that, that's 5 hours of police time. And then online crime is much more sophisticated. So I think as long as we keep all these things in mind when we're going, because it's a fast-paced environment, is the digital world and the open banking world. I think that's really important, and I'd like a bit more discussion on that. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And as someone, as I advise a lot of SMEs, and I am as SME, there is a genuine issue with not wanting to do things digitally because you don't know how safe and secure it is. And again, if things do happen, how do those things then get dealt with by the criminal justice system. So why don't we try and pick up all of those issues? Stephen, do you want to, from a banking point of view?
I think there's two things I'd say from a banking point of view. One is we can actually share more data. So to actually be able to spot fraud happening and financial crime happening earlier, and to have the contextual data around it, to be able to do the prosecution piece as well, I think is really key. So there are initiatives at the moment around kind of more fraud data sharing that kind of needs to be accelerated and kind of be supported across the industry. And I get your point around kind of consent and prosecution and the issues that have, but I don't think that's insurmountable. I think that's more of an execution maybe problem than practical. Because to be technical, open banking at the moment, if you share your kind of payment account data, that's kind of governed by PSD2 consent. If you want to share your name and address or other information, that's kind of GDPR, which is going to be in the DPDI bill. We as a bank are already exploring how we can build a journey that kind of combines those information sources together. So you could do an age verification while making a payment if you were buying a kind of age appropriate product or service. So we're working through that commercially, and I think you could probably do the same as the Home Office or the police service. Because if you're a victim of crime and somebody says to you, if you're happy to share some information, we can actually log this, register this, and give you a higher success rate that maybe we can resolve this for you. People will, I think, at least 50% of them say yes.
Well, it's a Labour Party conference, I'm going to make a party political point. There is no mitigation for incompetence, and the Home Office is one of the most incompetent offices in government, so I'm not going to hold my breath that that's going to happen with this government. No. But make sure you get out there and make sure we return government at least the next year. On that point, I would leave you from that lovely point.
Thanks, Maz, for joining us. I'm sure people will feedback anything useful. Let me come to Mo, and then I want to bring in Peter Dowd MP, who's sitting in the front row, who was down to speak at this event. So it would be great to hear a little bit from you, Peter, about some of the issues and challenges around these issues. Well, hang on, I'm just going to let Mo come in first and then bring it. I'm giving him a moment to think.
I think it's a really good points from. Can you hear me all right?
Speak directly at it.
I think it's really good points from Marion and Stephen. The one thing that I would perhaps reiterate, and I think is really important, and particularly when you're talking about whether it's consumers or SMEs, the difference with, for example, an open banking payment is that it is all biometric authentication in your mobile banking app. So from a security and fraud reduction perspective, the standard is much higher than 16-digit card numbers and things like that. I think that is very beneficial, and particularly if you are a merchant and a small and medium-sized merchant at that, the ability to reduce fraud is key, I think, to what is success in the long run for your business. And equally for the consumer, that trust that you have in your mobile banking app, your biometrics, is super important. I think your point, Ian, is a really good one, which is the way that we sort of regulate or monitor different use cases of open banking is super important as well. And I think that needs to be done on an ongoing basis. And certainly our dialogue with the FCA and the PSR and OBIE and lots of others in the industry is all about what are appropriate use cases, how do we manage good outcomes for consumers, for businesses, etc. But certainly that work needs to be ongoing. But I think from a kind of consumer and business perspective, fraud is reduced using open banking just by the definition of how the payment flow sort of works.
Brilliant. Peter, thank you very much for joining us.